Welcome, I am Daisy, your hostess. We are getting ready to enter the time machine and look at a Buddhist classic known as the Dhammapada. It is believed to date back to the 1st century B.C.E. or earlier, as it is mentioned in the Mahavamsa. The Mahavamsa? Well, that is a historical chronicle of Sri Lanka until the period of King Mahasena, 6th century BC to 4th century AD. Historians document that these scriptures existed before the 1st century, before Christ. And I'd like to take a minute here and express with all sincerity, I love all of you who are not afraid to explore, and I love your open mind, your respect and compassion for the stories and beliefs of others. Yes, some say potato, others say potato. At the end of the day, it is quite humbling to know we all must eat to sustain the flesh. I see you brought some friends. It's okay. Plenty of room here. While we shuffle in before we take off, I'll explain what the Dhammapada is. It is a collection of Buddha's sayings as passed down by his followers and drawn from the seminal Pali language. It is one of the greatest canonical books in the Buddhistic scriptures. I am not a scholar, so I'm not speaking firsthand. I've left my resource links in the description of this video. The word Dhammapada means the path of virtue. It is perhaps the best primer of Buddhism, if you're interested in knowing a little bit more of that. Its teachings on the moral path of life and encourages the development of self-mastery and strength of character, and points the way toward a heightened awareness of self and reality, and toward the ultimate attainment of enlightenment. This translation of the Dhammapada is punctuated with the translator's insightful notes and comments. Dr. Thomas Cleary is one of the most celebrated translators of spiritual classics into English. He earned a PhD in East Asian Languages and Civilizations from Harvard University and a JD from the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. He is the translator of over 70 volumes of Buddhist, Taoist, Confucian, and Islamic texts from Sanskrit, Chinese, Japanese, Pali, and Arabic. The Dhammapada brings to life the independence of thought and freedom of spirit of Buddha. All Buddhist teachings deal with states of mind and not external appearances. Gautama Buddha lived about 500 years before Christ. He was born in Lumbini in the Nepalese region of Terai, near the Indian border. His father, Suddhodana, was the ruler of the Shakya people, and Siddhartha Gautama grew up living the extravagant life of a young prince, until one day he didn't. He had lived in seclusion for most of his life, at the order of his father, until one day he ventured out into the world and was confronted with the reality of the inevitable suffering of life. At the age of 29, he left his kingdom and newborn son to lead an ascetic life and set his mind to relieve universal suffering. A lot happened from age of 29 and the time he meditated under the Bodhi tree till dawn one day. Through much effort on his part, he attained enlightenment at the age of 35 and earned the title Buddha, or Enlightened One, and for the remainder of his 80 years, the Buddha shared what he learned in an effort to help others reach enlightenment. He is one of the most important Asian thinkers and spiritual masters of all time, and contributed to many areas of philosophy, including metaphysics and ethics. The focus of the teachings is the mastery and purification of the self, strength and sobriety of character, and the ultimate attainment of freedom and independence. If you are seeking nirvana, and nirvana to mean that place of perfect peace and happiness, like heaven. In Buddhism, nirvana is the highest state that someone can attain, a state of enlightenment, meaning a person's individual desires and suffering go away. If you're ready, let's listen to what the Buddha has left for us through these next few pages. The Dhammapada, Sayings of Buddha, translated from the original Pali. Translator Thomas Cleary. Journey to the Magic City, A Path to Inner Peace. Introduction. The quest for inner peace is one of the most ancient endeavors of humankind. Perhaps an inevitable byproduct of consciousness itself. The search for serenity and freedom has occupied outstanding thinkers throughout history. So real and so urgent was the realization of the first thinking humans of their need for inner peace, it would seem that theories and techniques of mental freedom evolved in ancient societies along with material technologies. Wen Tzu, an ancient Chinese book, describes the origin and development of human psychological complications in several stages. At first, pure simplicity had not yet been lost, so all beings were very relaxed. When society fell away from this pristine state, there was a dawning of deliberate effort. People were on the verge of leaving their innocent mind and consciously understanding the universe. Eventually, all the people stood straight up and thinkingly bore the burden of looking and listening. And ultimately, people came to relish and desire things, and intelligence was seduced by externals. Essential life lost its reality. An ancient Indian book, the Sambhumika Isvara, presents an even more vivid and graphic picture of those mental afflictions infecting humanity that have continued to produce fear, strife, rapine, and all that we consider harmful and undesirable throughout history. Because of continually slipping into erroneous views, because of minds shrouded by the darkness of ignorance, because of being puffed up with pride, because of conceptions, because of mental fixation, of desires caught in the net of craving, because of hopes pursued by actions in the tangle of deceit and falsehood, because of deeds connected with envy and jealousy producing mundane states, because of accumulation of actions rife with passion, hatred, and folly, because of the flames of mind ignited by anger and resentment, because of the undertakings of actions bound up with delusion, because of seeds in the mind, intellect and consciousness bound to flows of lust, existence, and ignorance. Countless systems of thought and action were devised by ancient people to counter the ever more evident growth of negative byproducts of the increasing complexity of the human mind and human societies. The great variety of these systems even included such desperate measures as extreme denial and negation of the ordinary facts of life. Many others, though seeming to be less extreme, proved just as futile as denial and negation. Over centuries, even millennia, countless ways to inner peace were tested, adopted, adapted, and abandoned. Vast literatures, at first orally transmitted, then later written, developed out of this immemorial quest. One of the most respected of these books is called Dhammapada, Statements of Principle, a popular collection of sayings on the journey to inner peace from discourses attributed to Gautama Buddha, who lived about 500 years before Christ. Gautama is believed to have attained perfect peace of mind himself, and also to have then spent 49 years traveling from place to place teaching others how to secure serenity and inward freedom as well. The Dhammapada is one of the oldest and most beloved classics of early Buddhism, an anthology of statements of Buddha's teaching, which is what the title means. It is drawn from the ancient Pali Canon, one of the great bodies of primary Buddhist literature. The original text consists of 423 aphorisms grouped into 26 chapters. Known for its simplicity and easy readability, the Dhammapada is perhaps the best primer of basic Buddhism to be found anywhere. According to Buddhist tradition, there were more than 60 different philosophies current in Buddha's time, at least 6 of which were relatively prominent and well known. Although he addressed forest ascetics and village citizenry as well as nobles, grandees, and priests in terms common in the culture of the time, the Buddha neither accepted the authority of tradition nor subscribed to any of the speculative views of the new era. Redefining central concepts of ethics and spirituality, the Buddha produced a unique teaching that was not simply an outgrowth of its cultural milieu, nor yet an isolated anomaly or counterculture. The Buddha did not teach by ritual or dogma, denying that these led to freedom and enlightenment. He repudiated the ancient Aryan caste system, which had originated in the remote past as a labor division device but had become oppressive under later Aryan imperialism. Buddha also abandoned the cultish ceremonialism of the ancient priesthood, giving up the arcane, hieratic language of the Brahma priest. He talked to people from all walks of life in local vernacular. The Buddha's individual breakthrough in the already sophisticated praxis and psychology of yoga, unparalleled even in such an atmosphere of intense spiritual endeavor, is one of the greatest achievements. Entire groups of yogis and ascetics are known to have abandoned their own occult observances and enter Buddhist discipleship en masse, drawn to the perfect calm and clarity of the Buddha's way. The Buddha's teachings were never compiled into one uniform tradition, but there appeared to have been 2 main streams, each itself highly variegated. A stream of vernacular oral tradition was passed on among mendicants, while a broader and more diverse written tradition, which nonetheless included the quintessential teachings of the oral tradition, was passed on by people known as Dhammapada, or holders of teaching. The oral tradition was eventually written down using Pali, a newly developed literary language based on regularization of the vernaculars used by the Buddha, his disciples, and the early Buddhists in various communities. The many discourses of Buddha in this oral tradition beautifully illustrate the profound serenity and unalterable dignity of this religion of peace. The focus of the teachings is the mastery and purification of the self, strength and sobriety of character, and the ultimate attainment of freedom and independence. In the context of the totality of Buddhism, the process of individual liberation and peace of mind outlined in the teachings of the Dhammapada is referred to as the lesser journey, while its goal of nirvana is called the magic city. From there, a new perspective opens up. This is the great journey, whose goal of enlightened knowledge and vision is called the land of treasures. Once in that realm of consciousness, the ultimate journey is revealed. This is called the Tantra, or fundamental continuity, wherein heaven and earth are united. The final completion of the journey and the soundness of the spiritual state of the traveler depend on the insight, serenity, and forbearance acquired in the course of the lesser journey. Those who attempt to undertake the greater journey or the fundamental continuity without the spiritual and moral provisions accumulated on the lesser journey imperil themselves and those around them, stagnating just as surely as those who stop along the way. According to the Saddharmapundrarika Sutra, when the Buddha first announced the greater journey and revealed the preparatory role of the lesser journey, a large number of people who thought they had already attained ultimate salvation left the assembly in a huff. Although this is a representation, history confirms that there have been, since early times, factions of followers who refused the teachings of the greater journey and remained attached to their own interpretation of nirvana as the highest goal. Because they interpreted the lesser journey in isolation, therefore, they developed views and practices that proved, from the point of view of the greater journey, to be sterile and even morbid. This present translation and presentation of Buddha's teachings from the famous Dhammapada on the way to inner peace has been done from the point of view of the greater journey, restoring the original balance found in the overall text of Buddhism and dropping the priggishness and pessimism commonly projected on the Buddhism of the lesser journey, past and present, by those who consider it an isolation as something in, of, and for itself. For the convenience of the reader, each chapter is preceded by a brief translator's orientation and punctuated by translator's notes and comments. End of introduction. 1. Couplets. The first chapter presents its teaching in sets of verses contrasting good and bad ways and their consequences, juxtaposing the causes of joy and sorrow, purity of mind, self-control, moderation, freedom from rancor, accurate thought, purity of action, and practical application are praised as good ways in contrast to corruption of mind, grudge-bearing, hatred, laziness, self-indulgence, false thinking, tainted action, and heedlessness. 1. Everything has mind in the lead, has mind in the forefront, is made by mind. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, misery will follow, as the wheel of a cart follows the foot of the ox. 2. Everything has mind in the lead, has mind in the forefront, is made by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness will follow, like a shadow that never leaves. Note, the Buddhist Mahaparinirvana Sutra, or Scripture of the Absolute Nirvana, says, "Be master of mind, do not be mastered by mind." End note. 3. He reviled me, he injured me, he defeated me, he deprived me. In those who harbor such grudges, hatred never ceases. 4. He reviled me, he injured me, he defeated me, he deprived me. In those who do not harbor such grudges, hatred eventually ceases. Note, the Buddhist Sadhinirmokana Sutra, or Scripture Unlocking the Mysteries, explains that delusion arises from clinging to an imaginary reality formulated under the influence of the lull of words, the habit-forming influence that repetition of mental talk has on the state of the perceiving and thinking mind. End note. 5. Hatreds do not ever cease in this world by hating, but by not hating. This is an eternal truth. Note, a Zen Buddhist proverb says, "The arousal of thoughts is sickness, not continuing them is medicine." End note. 6. Others do not know we must pass away here, but for those who know this, contention thereby ceases. Note: contemplation of impermanence is traditionally recommended as one of the easiest ways to arouse the inspiration and will for liberation and enlightenment. End note. 7. One who lives as though the things of the world were pure, with senses unguarded and appetite immoderate, lazy and weak, will be overpowered by bewilderment, like a weak tree blown over by the wind. Note: bedevilment is commonly spoken of in Buddhist tradition as being of 4 major types. A. Bedevilment by afflictions, the 6 major afflictions being greed, hatred, delusion, conceit, doubt, and arbitrary opinion. B. Bedevilment by form, sensation, conception, action, and consciousness. C. Bedevilment by death. D. Bedevilment by manipulation of sense experience. End note. 8. One who lives as though the things of the world are impure, with senses guarded and appetite moderate, faithful and diligent, will not be overpowered by bedevilment, like a rock mountain unshaken by the wind. 9. One who would wear the saffron robe while not free from impurity is lacking in self-control and is not genuine, thus unworthy of the saffron robe. Note: the saffron robe was a symbol of the Buddhist renunciant who would gather discarded rags, wash them, sew them together into a covering for the body, and dye it a uniform color. Evidently, the saffron robe was in Buddha's time already being used hypocritically as a kind of camouflage. End note. 10. One who has vomited out all filth and concentrates on moral practices has self-control and is genuine, thus is worthy of the saffron robe. 11. Those who think the unreal is real and see the real as unreal do not reach the real, being in the realm of false thinking. 12. Those who know the real is real and see the unreal as unreal arrive at the real, being in the realm of accurate thought. Note: accurate perception and accurate thinking are both elements of the eightfold path recommended by Buddha for the realization of liberation. End note. 13. As rain leaks into a poorly roofed house, so does passion invade an uncultivated mind. 14. As no rain leaks into a well-roofed house, passion does not invade a cultivated mind. Note: Buddhist texts commonly use the image of guarding or protecting the mind, preventing the invasion of influences that render it vulnerable to delusion and compulsion. End note. 15. One who does evil sorrows in this world and after death, sorrowful in both. Seeing the pollution of one's own actions, one is tormented by sorrow and grief. 16. One who does good is happy in this world and after death, happy in both. Seeing the purity of one's own actions, one is happy, most joyful. 17. One who does evil suffers regret in this world and after death, suffering regret in both. One suffers regret knowing one has done wrong and suffers even more when gone to a state of misery. 18. One who does good rejoices in this world and after death, joyful in both. One rejoices knowing one has done good, and rejoices even more when gone to a state of felicity. Note: Buddhists consider it axiomatic that we individually and collectively experience the results of our own individual and collective actions. Buddhist concepts of morality and responsibility are based on this law of causality. End note. 19. Even if one talks a lot about what is beneficial, if one does not put it into practice, one is negligent. Like a herder counting the livestock of others, one has no share in spirituality. 20. Even if one speaks little of what is beneficial, one who acts on truth is truthful, having abandoned lust, hatred, and folly, endowed with accurate insight, liberated in mind, unattached to this world or the next, one has a share in spirituality. Note: the Avatamsaka Sutra, or flower ornament scripture, likens those who do not practice what they preach to penurious accountants, deaf musicians, and blind artists. End of couplet. 2. Vigilance. This chapter focuses particularly on describing the merits of vigilance and rebuking negligence and heedlessness. Vigilance means exercising unremitting awareness of self, truth, and reality, sloughing off the torpor of heedlessness to act practically on realities. 1. Vigilance is the realm of immortality. Negligence is the realm of death. People who are vigilant do not die. People who are negligent are as if dead. Note: the vigilant ones do not die because they are attuned to objective reality, which is eternal, not fixated on subjective delusion, which is temporal. 2. The wise, with thorough knowledge of vigilance, enjoy being vigilant and delight in the realm of the noble. Note: in Buddhist language, nobility refers to attainment of character and wisdom rather than inheritance of status by birth. End note. 3. Meditative, persevering, always striving diligently, the wise attain nirvana, supreme peace. Note: nirvana, Pali nibbana, means extinction, meaning the extinction of afflictions such as the aforementioned greed, hatred, delusion, conceit, doubt, and arbitrary opinion. The Sadhinirmokana Sutra refers to quiescent nirvana as the highest expedient. It is also called the nectar or ambrosia of immortality, the elixir that makes the infinite endlessness of the greater journey bearable to the individual human mind. End note. 4. Energetic, alert, pure in deed, careful in action, self-controlled, living in accord with truth, the vigilant one will rise in repute. 5. By energy, vigilance, self-control, and self-mastery, the wise one may make an island that a flood cannot sweep away. 6. Fools, unintelligent people, indulge in heedlessness. The wise one, however, guards vigilance as the best of riches. 7. Do not indulge in negligence. Do not be intimate with attachment to desire. The vigilant one, the meditative, gains great happiness. 8. When the sage expels negligence by vigilance, climbing the tower of insight, the wise one, sorrowless, gazes upon the sorrowing, ignorant crowd below, as one on a mountain peak views people on the ground. Note: Buddhists on the greater journey are always warned to avoid becoming so intoxicated by the state described here as to lose pity and compassion for others. That proscribed intoxication is called the deep pit of liberation. End note. 9. Vigilant among the heedless, awake among the sleeping, the wise one goes ahead like a racehorse outstripping a nag. 10. Indra became highest of the deified by vigilance. Vigilance they praise. Negligence is always censored. 11. The mendicant who delights in vigilance, fearing negligence, goes along like a fire burning up bondage subtle and gross. 12. The mendicant who delights in vigilance, fearing negligence, cannot fall away, being near to nirvana already. End of vigilance. 3. Mind. This chapter is a collection of sayings on the mercurial nature of the mind that has not been stabilized, and on the need for stabilization of mind in order to sustain cognition of truth. Stabilization is cultivated by watchfully guarding the mind to keep it from becoming fragmented by random thoughts. This watchfulness is cultivated by recollection of the consequences, good and ill, proceeding from care and negligence in matters of mental hygiene. 1. The mind is restless, unsteady, hard to guard, hard to control. The wise one makes it straight, like a fletcher straightens an arrow. 2. Like a fish out of water, cast on dry ground, this mind flaps around, trying to escape the realm of bedevilment. 3. The mind is mercurial, hard to restrain, alighting where it wishes. It is good to master this mind. A disciplined mind brings happiness. 4. Let the wise one watch over the mind, so hard to perceive, so artful, alighting where it wishes. A watchfully protected mind brings happiness. 5. The mind travels afar, acts alone, is incorporeal, and haunts a cave. Those who will control it escape the bonds of bedevilment. Note: the mind haunts a cave in the sense of clinging to the body as self and holding to the subjective worldview as the world itself. End note. 6. For the wakeful one whose mind is unimpassioned, whose thoughts are undisturbed, who has given up both virtue and sin, there is no fear. Note: giving up both virtue and sin means abandoning impulse to evil and relinquishing anticipation of reward for goodness. The Japanese Zen master Bunan warned that when some people hear about detachment from good and evil, they think it means doing evil and thinking that's good. End note. 7. Knowing the body to be like a water pitcher, making the mind like a citadel, fight bedevilment with the weapon of insight. Guard what you have won without attachment to it. Note: attachment to spiritual attainments is also a source of bondage. The classical Zen master Bai Zhang refers to this as affliction by the dust of religion. A Zen proverb says, "The spoils of war are lost in celebration." End note. 8. This body, alas, will soon lie on the ground without consciousness, abandoned like a useless piece of rotten wood. 9. Whatever an enemy may do to an enemy, and whatever the hateful may do to the hateful, the mind with a warped intent does even worse than that. Note: the underlying idea here is that ordinarily people readily fear harm from others without giving equal consideration to how much they harm themselves. End note. 10. What not even a mother, a father, or any other relative will do, a rightly directed mind does do even better. Note: similarly, the underlying idea here is that ordinarily people readily depend on others for their well-being without giving equal consideration to what they need to do or should be doing for themselves. Compassion for others is useless if you cannot first master your own life. End of Section 3. Section 4. Flowers. The title of this chapter stands for Things of the World, which we may heedlessly pursue as vanities even as time and death stalks us, or we may mindfully use constructively to beautify the world if we realize their value. Even better than worldly color and fragrance, the aphorisms go on, is fineness of character by which one may become, as it is said, like an exquisite lotus growing from a heap of dust. 1. Who will conquer this earth and this world of death with its gods? Who will gather well-expressed words of truth as an expert gathers flowers? 2. It is the studious who will conquer this earth and the world of death with its gods. It is the studious who will gather well-expressed words of truth as an expert gathers flowers. Note: studious in this context does not mean academic studiousness, but sincerity and diligence in studying what is true. End note. 3. Knowing the body is like froth, realizing it is insubstantial, breaking the flowery arrow of the killer, one goes to a realm invisible to the king of death. Note: the killer is bedevilment personified. See the list on page 9. The king of death is a personification of death itself in reference to the force of the death process that exacts payment of debts incurred in life in the inconceivable, intensified perceptual and emotional experience of the end of physical life. End note. Death carries off someone absorbed in picking flowers, just as a flood sweeps away a sleeping village. 5. Death overpowers one absorbed in picking flowers before one has attained one's aim. Note: picking flowers here means indulging in objects of desire to the point of becoming heedless of the objective nature of desire. End note. 6. Just as the bee takes the nectar and leaves without damaging the color or scent of the flowers, so should the sage act in a village. Note: this popular Buddhist image refers to living in the world without obsessions, not bending it out of shape by greedy and aggressive attitudes and behaviors. End note. 7. Do not look at the faults of others, or what others have done or not done. Observe what you yourself have done and have not done. Note: the famous Zen master Dahui used to recommend a parallel proverb as a convenient way to gain access to awakening. Don't ride another's horse. Don't draw another's bow. Don't mind another's business. End note. 8. Like a beautiful flower that is colorful but has no fragrance. Even well-spoken words bear no fruit in one who does not put them into practice. 9. Like a beautiful flower that is both colorful and also fragrant, well-spoken words bear fruit in one who puts them into practice. 10. Just as many kinds of garlands can be made from a heap of flowers, so also much good can be done by a mortal being. Note: so much for the popular cliché that Buddhism is pessimistic, negative, or world-denying. The third Chinese patriarch of Zen wrote, "Do not despise the 6 senses, for the 6 senses are not bad. After all, they are the same as true awakening." End note. 11. The scent of flowers does not go against the wind. Not sandalwood, not aloes wood, nor jasmine, but the scent of the virtuous does go against the wind. The fragrance of righteousness perfumes all directions. 12. Sandalwood, aloes wood, blue lotus, great flowered jasmine, even among such fragrant things, the fragrance of virtuous conduct is best of all. 13. The fragrance of aloes wood and sandalwood is but slight. The fragrance of virtuous people is supreme, reaching even to the gods. Note: the visionary Buddhist scripture Avatamsaka Sutra abounds with images of fragrances symbolizing the perfume of morality and goodness of character. End note. 14. There is no way for bedevilment to assail people who have perfected virtuous conduct, who live vigilantly, and who are liberated by true knowledge. Note: apropos of liberation by true knowledge, the classical Zen master Linji said, "People who study Buddhism should seek real perception and understanding for now. If you attain real true perception and understanding, then birth and death don't affect you. You are free to go or stay." He also said, "It is most urgent that you seek real true perception and understanding so you can be free in the world and not confused by ordinary spiritualists." 15 and 16. Just as a fragrant, delightful lotus grows from a heap of dust thrown on the road, so also in the midst of blind mortals, who are like so much dust, do disciples of the truly enlightened shine. Note: a similar image of being in the world but not of the world is used to describe the greater journey, in which individual liberation and enlightenment are continually reinvested in the world for the benefit of people of the world. End of Section 4. Section 5. The Fool. This chapter deals with the mental poison of folly, one of the factors known to produce misery. Here the fool is characterized by ignorance of truth, possessiveness, conceit, insensitivity, short-sightedness, and self-importance. Great emphasis is placed on the fact that the company of fools is not merely wasteful, but even injurious. Fools hurt not only themselves, but others as well, through ignorance and misapplied knowledge. 1. The night is long to the wakeful. A distance of 10 miles is long to the weary. The road of life and death is long to the fools who do not know the truth. 2. A wayfarer who does not find anyone better or equal should firmly go alone. There is no companionship with a fool. Note: the companionship of fools is harmful even in the absence of ill intentions. The goodwill of a fool can be as harmful through ignorant action as the opposition of a fool. End note. 3. I have sons, I have wealth. The fool suffers thinking thus. Even oneself is not one's own. How then sons? How then wealth? Note. The Quran says, "Vying for more and more diverts you until you go to the tombs." Also, know that the life of the world is but diversion and distraction, ostentation and vying for glory among yourselves, and striving for more and more wealth and children. And what is the life of the world but the stuff of deception? End note. 4. A fool who is conscious of his folly is thereby wise. The fool who thinks himself wise is the one to be called a fool. Note. Confucius said, "Shall I teach you how to know something? Realize you know it when you know it, and realize you don't know it when you don't." End note. 5. Even if a fool associates with someone wise all his life, he will never know the truth, just as a spoon cannot discern the taste of the soup. Note. The kind of pearls before swine situation described by this aphorism is commonly represented in folk expressions such as the name of the Buddha in the ear of a horse and a piece of gold to a cat. End note. 6. Someone who is intelligent will realize the truth right away by associating with someone wise for even a while, just as the tongue discerns the taste of the soup. Note. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra describes those quick to learn as like good horses that sit off at the mere shadow of the crop, not needing to be whipped or spurred. There are many examples of Hindu philosophers, ascetics, and yogi attaining liberation very quickly through the penetrating answers of Buddha to their questions and challenges. See aphorisms 15 and 16. 7. Stupid fools act as enemies to themselves, doing evil deeds that have painful results. 8. No deed is well done that is followed by regret, whose consequences are attended by tears and weeping. 9. That deed is well done that is not followed by regret, whose consequences are attended by joy and happiness. Note. Far from being irrational and mysterious, as some pseudo-Zen masters would have it, Buddhism requires common sense and clear thinking. End note. 10. As long as it has not borne fruit, the fool thinks evil sweet, but when evil bears fruit, then the fool suffers misery. 11. The abstinence of the ignorant is worth less than a 16th part of those who have integrated all truths. Note. Hadrat Ali, the fourth Orthodox Caliph of Islam, is reported to have said, "How many of those who fast have nothing to their fast but hunger and thirst?" End of note. 12. The effect of an evil deed, like milk, does not congeal at once. It follows the foolish one, burning like fire covered with ashes. Note. According to Buddhist philosophy, actions bear fruit in different time frames. A result does not necessarily follow immediately upon its cause. Those who do not keep this in mind may inadvertently misperceive the true cause of a given event. End note. 13 through 14. Whatever knowledge a fool acquires tends to be harmful. It destroys the fool's virtue, going to his head. He may wish for undeserved honor, precedence among mendicants, rulership among settled populations, and homage among other groups. Note. Combine the Western proverbs knowledge is power and power corrupts and see what you get. One of the strangest ideas to be found among Western Buddhist groups is that the greater number of males accorded recognition, honor, precedence, or rulership in Buddhist historical annals means that females were suppressed in Asian Buddhism. Using the logic of Buddhist teaching itself, as illustrated here, in contrast, this phenomenon may simply mean that more male fools acquired knowledge. End note. 15. This I have done, let the laity and the mendicants know of it. In what is to be done, and what is not to be done, let my will be followed. Such are the thoughts of fools. Thus do craving and conceit grow. 16. Once is the way to gain, the other is the way to nirvana. Knowing this fact, students of Buddha should not take pleasure in being honored, but should practice detachment. End of Section 5. Section 6. The Wise. This chapter presents the counterpoint to the fool described in the 5th chapter. Here the technique of making a point by comparison and contrast, introduced in the opening chapter of couplets, is pursued from one chapter to the next. A descriptive rebuke of the fool is followed by illustrative praise of the wise. The wise, says the Buddha, are not those who are loved by all, but those who speak and live the truth. That is why they are not liked by all people, but are liked by the good and disliked by the bad. The wise are masters of themselves, not moved by the opinions of others, clear-minded, peaceful, principled, independent, free from compulsion. Such people are said to attain perfect nirvana, consummate peace of mind, even in this world. 1. Whoever sees one who points out faults as a revealer of hidden treasures should follow such a wise one, intelligent, who tells what is blameworthy, good, not ill, happens to one who follows such an individual. Note, the great Zen master Wuzu said, the ancients were glad to hear of their own errors. End note. 2. Let one admonish and educate and lead away from what is uncouth. Then one will be liked by good people and disliked by bad people. Note, Confucius said, it is better when the good among the people like you and the bad dislike you. End note. 3. One should not associate with evil companions. One should not associate with base companions. Associate with good companions. Associate with noble companions. Note, in his famous admonitions, the classical Zen master Guishan wrote, companionship with the good is like walking through dew and mist. Although they do not drench your clothing, in time it becomes imbued with moisture. Familiarity with the evil increases wrong knowledge and views, day and night, creating evil. End note. Those who delight in truth sleep peacefully, with clear minds. The wise always take pleasure in truth expounded by the noble. Note, Taoists say that ancient sages slept without dreams and rose without worries. End note. 5. The irrigation engineer guides water, the fletcher makes arrows true, the carpenter makes timber straight, the wise master themselves. Note, the Tao Te Ching says, those who overcome others are powerful, those who overcome themselves are strong. End note. 6. As a solid boulder does not shake in the wind, the wise are not moved by censure or praise. Note, the Taoist Huanian masters say, sages are not controlled by names. End note. 7. Just as a deep lake is clear and clean, so do the wise become clear after hearing the truths. 8. Real people are unattached wherever they are. Those at peace do not speak out of desire for pleasure, whether they encounter comfort or pain. The wise show neither elation nor depression. Note, the Huwainian masters also say, when you truly understand human nature and destiny, kindness and justice are naturally included. Ups and downs cannot disturb your mind. End note. 9. One should not hope for children, riches, or dominion for oneself or for others. One who does not seek personal enrichment by unrighteous means is ethical, insightful, principled. Note, this does not mean rejection of the world, but trust in nature and following natural laws of cause and effect. End note. 10. Few are the people who reach the beyond. The others run along this shore. Note, this shore means the mundane world. The beyond in this context means nirvana, inner peace. End note. 11. When truth is correctly explained, those who follow truth will go beyond the domain of death, which is so hard to cross over. Note, nirvana is also called amrita, which means immortality, or figuratively, the elixir of immortality. End note. 12. The wise should abandon evil things and do what is good, leaving attachments and entering into a life without attachment, the individualism that is hard to enjoy. Note, life without attachment is true individualism in that it is tantamount to freedom from peer pressure. Confucius said, ideal people can stand alone without fear and leave society without distress. End note. 13. Let the wise seek enjoyment therein, having given up all desire and having rid oneself of mental pollution. Note, therein means the true individualism of life without attachment. It is hard to enjoy in the sense that it does not offer sentimental support for ego and personality satisfactions. End note. 14. Those in whom the mind is correctly cultivated in the limbs of perfect enlightenment, who have no attachments and enjoy being free from grasping, and who have stopped all compulsion, attain perfect nirvana here in this world. Note, the limbs of enlightenment are 7 in number. 1. Recollection. 2. Examination of realities. 3. Diligence. 4. Joyfulness. 5. Tranquility. 6. Concentration. 7. Equanimity. End of section. Section 7. The Worthy. This chapter describes the Arhat, one who has completed the lesser journey and attained the inner peace of nirvana. The Arhat is said to have no sorrow, no baggage, no compulsive routines, no mental or physical agitation, and no superstition. Dispassionate, serene, they attain liberation and become free. 1. For those who have completed their journey, left sorrow behind, are free in all circumstances, and liberated from all bondage, affliction does not exist. 2. The thoughtful exert themselves. They do not relish attachment. Like swans leaving a lake, they abandon one attachment after another. 3. Those who have no accumulation, who eat with perfect knowledge, whose fears is emptiness, singleness, and liberation, are hard to track, like birds in the sky. Note: to have no accumulation means not having a load of psychological baggage or complexes accumulated in the course of experience in the world. End note. 4. Those whose compulsions are gone, who are not attached to food, whose sphere is emptiness, singleness, and liberation, are hard to track, like birds in the sky. Note: in the greater journey, emptiness, singleness, and liberation are called the three great meditations. In their objective senses, they are a sphere referring to the ultimate truth of realities as inconceivable, not what we imagine, in terms of our subjective attributions, definitions, and attachments. In Zen Buddhism, the bird's track is sometimes used to represent the first stage of Zen practice. Zen master Shigetsu explains, this path means first getting rid of clinging to self even while living in the present heap of energy and matter, attaining our original state of egolessness. Then you must also know that things have no inherent identities either. Once you realize the selflessness of persons and things, even in the midst of your daily activities, you walk in emptiness. This is called the bird's path. End note. 5. Those whose senses are tranquil, like a horse well controlled by a charioteer, who are free from pride and have no compulsions, are the envy of even the gods. 6. For one who is docile as the earth, a pillar of good conduct, like an unpolluted lake, there are no more compulsive routines. 7. The thought is calm, the speech and action are calm, in one who is liberated and gone to serenity by perfect knowledge. 8. The best person is one who is not credulous, who knows the uncreated, who has cut off ties, gotten rid of chance, and renounced desires. Note: it seems easy and perilous to confuse credulousness with faith, humility, sincerity, or similar faculties. False teachers, of course, encourage this confusion rather than clarify it. The uncreated is that into which no human artifice enters. To cut off ties, get rid of chance, and renounce desires sounds like asceticism, but this is a superficial interpretation. The meaning on the greater journey is living in the world through free will, in a very special sense, rather than by habit, or willy-nilly, or expectantly. End note. 9. Village or forest, hill or dale, anywhere that saints dwell is pleasant. Note: when Hadrat Ali heard a man reviling the world, he asked, "Are you accusing the world, or is the world accusing you?" End note. 10. Forests are pleasant where people do not frolic. Those who are free of passion will enjoy them, because they are not pleasure seekers. Note: Buddhist contemplatives on the right path draw a strict line between spiritual resort to forests and aesthetics and recreational resort to forests. The differences in consequences can be seen both in the effects on the individuals and the effects on the environment. End note. End section. Section 8. Thousands. This chapter is generally aimed at drawing a distinction between quantity and quality in life, contrasting superficial activities, observances, and aims with deeper appreciation of perennial truths and enduring values. 1. Better than 1,000 sayings composed of meaningless statements is a single meaningful statement, on hearing which one becomes calm. 2. Better than 1,000 verses composed of meaningless lines is a single line, of verse on hearing which one becomes calm. 3. Better than one who recites 100 verses of meaningless lines is one verse on hearing which one becomes calm. Note, real Buddhist literature is supposed to be functional in the instrumental sense of being liberative and enlightening. Aesthetic or other literary concerns are subordinate to the purpose of specific functional application. 4. Though one defeats 1,000,000 men in battle, one who overcomes the self alone is in fact the highest victor. 5 and 6. For one who is self-controlled and always disciplined in action, victory over the self is better than victory over others. The victory of someone like this cannot be made into defeat, even by a god, an angel, or a devil. Note, the Taoist Huinian masters say, I do not let the changes of a given time determine the way I master myself. What I call self-mastery means that my nature and life abide where they are secure. End note. 7. Even if someone performs ritual sacrifices 1,000 times every month for 100 years, if he honors a self-cultivated individual for even a moment, that honor is better than what is sacrificed in 100 years. 8. Even if one tends a ceremonial fire in the forest for 100 years, if one honors a self-cultivated individual for even a moment, that honor is better than the sacrifice of 100 years. 9. Whatever may be sacrificed or offered up for a year in this world in order to gain merit, all that is less than a fourth, as good as paying respect to upright people. Note, as these last 3 sayings illustrate, the Buddha abandoned cultism, superstition, and ignorant ritualism. End quote. 10. For those who are always courteous and respectful of elders, 4 things increase: life, beauty, happiness, and strength. Note, this does not represent a primitive or superstitious doctrine of reward for good deeds on the model of a commercial transaction. Courtesy and respect for elders encourage respect for life and living beings. These feelings have a calming and focusing effect on the mind and body, which naturally enhance the general health and well-being of the individual who behaves in this manner, as well as the group or community in which this habit prevails. End note. 11. It is better to live one day ethically and reflectively than to live 100 years immoral and unrestrained. 12. It is better to live one day wisely and reflectively than to live 100 years in ignorance and indulgence. 13. It is better to live one day making strenuous effort than to live 100 years lazily and listlessly. 14. It is better to live one day seeing transitoriness than to live 100 years not seeing transitoriness. Note, awareness of impermanence enhances your experience of the world, sharpening your sense of the uniqueness of the moment and its opportunity. End note. 15. It is better to live one day seeing the deathless state than to live 100 years not seeing the deathless state. Note, seeing the deathless state, nirvana, ever present behind the shifting scenes of the world, gives you the ultimate equanimity to see what is what in this world while simultaneously bearing the realization of what is ultimately and finally real and true. End note. 16. It is better to live one day seeing the ultimate truth than to live 100 years not seeing the ultimate truth. End of section. Meet me at the next video where we continue with the Dhammapada and the Buddha's teachings on evil, on old age, and more. Please do leave me a comment, hit like, share, and subscribe.